Well, there's nothing like a jam-packed insights on a Friday here as our next storm system moves in. I'm meteorologist Danielle Noyes. We're going to break down all the weekend storm details, snow timeline, amounts, the sleet and the freezing rain concerns as we get that wintry mix Saturday night into Sunday, lingering icy spots on Sunday that may cause some issues, and strong wind on the backside of the storm on Monday. We'll get to all of it. Storm center right now ejecting out of the Rockies will slide east. Pick up moisture from the Gulf, snow on the north side, some mix in between, heavy rain, actually some thunderstorms and severe weather anticipated tomorrow for Saturday. Big area of isolated to scattered, strong to severe storms, isolated tornadoes, some localized flash flooding, hail, damaging wind gusts that risk greatest from portions of Louisiana, stretching back into much of Mississippi and far western Alabama. The area is shaded in orange there, but just a sign of the amount of moisture and energy with this system. Sunday is just going to be a mess up and down the eastern, really third of the country with snow, even on the back side of this, heavy rain, the mix in between, a secondary area of low pressure is going to develop right over southern New England, and that will have implications on our forecast that I'll talk about in a second. Behind the system, upslope snow for us, the cold blasts in and the wind cranks up too as the storm center continues to strengthen well off to our north and our east. It won't be the coldest spot across the country here at home on Monday. That's the northern plains where it goes 10 to 20 below zero, single digits in much of the Midwest. For us, it's going to be teens and 20s, but with the wind factored in, a couple different things is going to cause the potential for some damage and create wind chill values that are going to be running in the single digits to teens for many of us. All right, let's zoom in. We'll take things kind of step by step through the weekend. Tomorrow morning, it's cold. There are some clouds in place. Those clouds will increase and thicken, but we are dry. Tomorrow morning, tomorrow midday, even early afternoon for much of central and eastern New England. There will be some snow, though, that comes in 1 to 2 p.m. Southern Vermont, western Massachusetts, much of Connecticut. Notice a few snow showers may be out ahead of it. Now, there's enough dry air in place that the leading edge may actually evaporate, and it has tough making eastward progress for a period tomorrow late afternoon. Let's put some light snow in and around Worcester around 4 p.m., give or take, and then it expands east between about 6 and 8 p.m. By 9, here's the map. A lot of spots snowing. Deeper blues, so it is a steady and at times moderate to heavy snowfall late tomorrow evening into the first part of the overnight. Here comes that mix, and maybe I went through it a little quickly, but at midnight, it's already going to be starting to come into far southwestern Connecticut. Notice the temperature rises in those spots along the south coast. The pink representing sleet and freezing rain, and that is going to be the most critical part of this storm in terms of determining how much sleet will fall, how much ice accretion, ice accumulation will fall. Sleet, the pellets of ice, freezing rain, freezes on contact and clings to everything and creates that glaze around everything. So bigger concerns with that in terms of weighing things down. We'll talk about in a second. By the time we get to 5 to 7 a.m., that mix is expanding northward into portions of central New England. Snow and a fluffy snow for much of the North Country where the jackpot will be. Notice even Boston, it takes a little bit of time before we rise above freezing Sunday mid to late morning. Rain will fall steadily and at times heavily in some of the deeper downpours here on the Cape, the South Coast. Can't even rule out an isolated rumble of thunder that comes through along the South Coast by Sunday, late morning through the early afternoon. So I am concerned with some localized poor drainage flooding, some ponding of water, some big puddles in those spots. North and west of Boston, the concern is with the freezing rain, a prolonged period or an extended period that may last into Sunday afternoon because watch the temperature. 32 in Worcester, 31 in Fitchburg, even Lawrence. Okay, 33. If we're off by a degree, there's very little wiggle room with this storm in terms of that mix that will continue through the afternoon in many areas outside of 495, Litchfield Hills too, and extending into much of northern New England, into some of the valleys briefly. Snow and all snow in the far north country. A little mix comes into play too when you get along the coastline of Maine. More likely that it's a sleet scenario when you extend into portions of central and northern New England that do make the changeover. When does the back edge come through? For most of us, it's during the early evening. There may be some spots that linger longer in far northern Maine and down east Maine until the later evening. And I can't rule out an isolated shower that's kind of still floating around. This has a ton of moisture, so I want to talk about precipitation forecast. If this was an all snow event, notice the liquid that falls from the sky, inch and a half. This will be a 1 to 2 foot snowstorm across the region. But we have a little bit of warm air aloft, high in the sky, that creates that temperature profile. That means there's going to be some changeover here. So expected snowfall. And if you watched Insights yesterday, It's pretty much Matt's map with a couple little tweaks, and I threw some numbers on here, right? So let's zoom in. Jackpot in northern New England. Southern New England, it's 1 to 2 in the mid and outer Cape. Snowfall here through maybe the Cape Cod Canal up through the South Shore, more like 2 to 4, extending into much of Rhode Island, much of eastern and southern Connecticut. Then we bump it up 4 to 6 when you get in and around the Hartford area, Litchfield Hills, Metro West, City of Boston, and just north of town. Merrimack Valley, and then in through northern central Worcester County, western Massachusetts, much of southern New Hampshire at 6 to 8, and then amounts do ramp up the farther north you go. The pinks, a widespread 8 to 12, over a foot likely here in the Green Mountains, extending into northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and 12 to 18 into the Crown of Maine. There will likely be some higher totals, particularly in northern Maine and northern New Hampshire when all is said and done, when you factor in a little more of the upslope that takes place Sunday night into Monday morning on the backside of the storm. And then amounts will taper off from 8 to 12 to 6 to 8 near Bangor and Augusta, and 4 to 6 when you get from the mid-coast to down East Maine. So a decrease the farther central and south you head along the Pine Tree State. All right, so let's break down predicted icing here. This is going to be critical, and there are some signs that we hang on to that period of freezing rain through much of the day on Sunday through the interior. Now, when you get a trace, a tenth, a few hundredths, yes, it creates that icy glaze, and there will be slippery travel and treacherous travel no matter what. I think the biggest question is, will we see some of these higher ice accretions realized? When you get to that half-inch threshold, everything's caked, it weighs things down. That's when you start to see the risk of outages and tree damage pop up. And that risk will be greatest. We'll keep a close eye on it from southern New Hampshire into the Worcester Hills, perhaps into southern Worcester County, and then some portions of southern Vermont into western Massachusetts and potentially into the Litchfield Hills too. Obviously, it's going to be a big difference if you get the sleet or freezing rain. Sleet is a little bit of a thinner, shallower, warm layer above our heads. I do think we'll get a period of sleet, but then may transition to freezing rain as it lingers longer through these spots in central and western Massachusetts in the deeper pinks. Everybody else that's in the lighter pinks, there'll be a little bit of a glaze, but it's likely to be less than a tenth of an inch, maybe a quarter in a few spots. So that's something we're going to keep a real close eye on. Now, here's the wind. Stick with me. We are talking about the wind easing tonight into tomorrow. Then the wind shifts around. It starts to come in out of the southeast. Then it comes in from the east as the storm center comes close by. Then it shifts to the northeast. I'm not overly concerned with damaging wind during this system. There may be, though, a brief period where we gust actually out of the southwest 40 to 45 miles per hour on the Cape as this secondary low goes by. And this is the key player because as that wind turns counterclockwise around low pressure, it's going to shift out of the northeast and north and kind of lock in some of that cold air that we took a look at with temperatures right around freezing or below through the interior. So that's why we think that cold air lasts longer. Otherwise, we're talking about the wind shifting after that and strengthening Sunday night, ramping up into Monday. Wow, look at that. Widespread 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts. I wouldn't be surprised to see some gusts to 55 or isolated 60. So Monday is a day to watch for scattered outages or damage that may occur on the backside of the system, and the biting wind creating some bitterly cold wind chills as well. So Sunday night, no matter what precipitation type you had, everything's going to freeze up as we see the cold air come in, teens and 20s below freezing even along the south coast. Now, it takes a little bit of time to get there. Monday, some of these numbers may be a little bit generous. We're stuck in the 20s most of the day, teens in the north. Then you factor in that wind that's gusting 45 to 55 miles per hour, and it's going to create wind chill values at the warmest time of the day on Monday that are in the teens, single digits, and sub-zero in the far north country. So there's a lot to watch in the coming days. You can watch it all on our app, which is free on the App Store and Google Play. Over 50,000 users. Thank you to everybody who's downloaded it so far. Keep spreading the word. Any updates, of course, later today and through the weekend, we'll put right in the video section right at the top. You get the hourly forecast, interactive radar. Social media, you can check it out too. We'll put updates out there. And always, you can go to our website at onedegreeoutside.com.